It's Query and Company.
I'm going to be keeping you company for the next few hours.
You are not going to believe the company.
This company.
You're going to bankrupt your mama's company?
At least I have the radio to keep me company.
On 93.5 and 107.5, The Fan.
Second down and goal at the 1. Again, Jones under center. Takes the snap. Trying to put the ball across the goal line. There's the signal. Finally, touchdown. Shotgun snap for the quarterback. Throws to wide open Jonathan Taylor. And he's going to walk in. Touchdown. The second-year quarterback has time. Walks it downfield. And it is an overthrow. And it's intercepted by Cam Bynum. Denver leads by 2, 28-26. His first field goal try today. This one is up. Has plenty of leg. And he missed it. He missed it. It hit off the right upright. He doinked it off the right upright. A 60-yard field goal from Spencer Schrader. Sanchez to put it down. Snap, placement, kick. It's on its way. Headed for the uprights, and it is no good.
Kind of disappointed in myself because I felt the pressure coming from whatever side while looking at it on film. And I thought, man, like I just let the environment get to me a little bit. And then I saw the flag.
Personal foul, leverage, defense number 96. Oh, wow! Automatic first down.
Oh, man, leaping. What in the world? What kind of a call is that?
Short mentality. Next kick. I was like, okay, reset, think about it. Like, you know what to do. Just treat it like an extra point. Ultimate faith in Luke and Rigo. You know that they're going to do their job, and kept my eyes down and knocked it through for the team.
Sanchez to put it down. There's the snap. Kick is on its way. Headed for the uprights, and it is good! A walk-off field goal. Spencer Schrader wins it for the Colts. Colts win 29-28. Ball game. I-N-D-Y.
Great gutsy, gritty team win. Great performance. Some things to clean up. But to get 2 back-to-back wins at home in front of our home crowd, the atmosphere out there was electric. Crowd showed up. It was awesome. We got to go do it again.
So that's how it sounded yesterday, and as well, back to, and I cannot be the only one that thought it. Matt Taylor on the call for the Colts radio network. Shane Steichen, you heard him afterwards. Spencer Schrader as well. And Al Michaels from the only other time, and I know that leverage and leaping by technicality are slightly different. One is using, I think, like your arms to leverage you or pull you up. The other is actually stepping on a player to leap off of them. But the only other time that I've ever, and maybe I just have not watched enough football, maybe I have a short memory, I don't know, that I've ever heard that kind of a play was in 2003. You got to go all the way back then. But, of course, probably the most famous regular season road game in Colts history, the Monday Night Miracle, when Simeon Rice, who later would become a Colt, was whistled for leaping in that play for Mike Vanderjagt. Al Michaels with the incredulous, like, what in the world is that? And I think a lot of people thought that yesterday. But the Colts get a win. They are 2-0, and I thought about this as the game was unfolding. Yesterday, what we saw, and you know what? Colts fans, look, you could say what you want. Look a gift Bronco in the mouth, whatever you want to say. Bottom line is the Colts are 2-0. There are only so many teams in the National Football League already that are still unblemished, and the Colts are one of them. And they are leading their division. They have an opportunity, and I think you would say an excellent opportunity to start out 3-0 and really put themselves in, dare I say it, a position of leverage within the division. And there were several areas where you saw how this is a different Colts team and how this year is going to be different. 2 games does not a season make. It's easy to look at game 3 and say, okay, 3-0, and then things get interesting. But part of the maturation of a franchise, part of the growth of a team is taking everything one game at a time and not looking too far ahead. And Tennessee on paper, and I know I'm getting ahead of myself here, but that, you know, that could be the proverbial quote-unquote trap game. And if they go in and take care of business in that game, then that is a sign of growth. But so too the following, and this is what I thought about yesterday. Late in that game, and you all saw it, when Jonathan Taylor did Jonathan Taylor things, and the way that Jonathan Taylor was, obviously utilizing him in the passing game, not something that we expected to necessarily be talking a lot about. A 68-yard run, and not once but twice situations where he got around the edge and he's going over 22 miles an hour and, and he's in distance and he's in space and he's down the sideline and you're like, here you go. And every time, and especially early in the first quarter when he had the one big play where he's running down the sideline, and I said it, and Chris Widlick in the press box said it. I mean, I think at the same time, both of us were like, don't drop the ball, ha-ha, right? But if you think about a year ago, the Colts and the things that cost them games is they made mistakes that cost them games. They were careless. They had that situation of Jonathan Taylor dropping the ball. And yes, I know yesterday they had 11 penalties. 11 penalties. That exceeded by one, I believe, last year's total within a game. And they've got to, dare I say it, clean that up. But even with 11 penalties, what did they not do yesterday? What did they not do yesterday? They did not turn the ball over. They were not careless with the football.
Through 2 games, 0 turnovers for the Colts offense, Jake.
And they did not punt. Rigoberto Sanchez has the best job in Indianapolis.
Holding footballs?
Holding footballs. And on a miss, getting able to hold them again. But my point is this. Yesterday, the Colts found themselves in a position where, partially because of, at times, some missteps defensively, and maybe because of their excessive penalties, they were facing defeat. And there have been numerous Colts teams of the past that game was over. But maybe just yesterday, for once, the football gods actually shone down upon them and gave them that second lease on life. Because when it came down to it, it was Denver and not Indianapolis that made the critical mistake. And it was Denver and not Indianapolis that made the critical penalty. And the Colts got a second chance, and they took advantage of that second chance with that field goal. But in a game that symbolized the reawakening of the Jonathan Taylor drop at the goal line, you now had a situation where they were not going to make the same errors twice, and when it came down to it, it was the other team that made the critical mistake that cost the game, and the Colts took advantage of that. And they are playing, yes, they had the penalties, and we can get into that, and we will nitpick that. And yes, they had areas in particular defensively where I thought that they, obviously Xavier Howard yesterday was, woof is correct. I mean, he was completely on his own island. But Nick Cross played really well, who's going to join the show today, by the way, in the 2 o'clock hour. Nick Cross will join us today. Nick Cross played well. One of the things that I like about the Colts, yes, you would like to see your leading tacklers in a game be nothing but your defensive tackles because it means nobody's getting beyond that, right? But their defense, Lou Anarumo's defense right now, I think still, it kind of hits you from all areas. And they probably did take a little bit of a step backward yesterday, but Denver, and I'm not saying Bo Nix by any stretch of the imagination is Josh Allen here. I'm not saying he's Lamar Jackson, but I do think that Denver offensively, Sean Payton's a pretty bright offensive mind. And so you had a little bit bigger test. And if there was an area of concern yesterday for the Colts, it was that defense, but at times. And, they got gashed early with the run game, etc. But what we saw yesterday were the two things, the first of which I mentioned, and that is that they waited until, and yes, it was the last play of the game, but they were able to take advantage this time of a game-changing, costly error by Denver as opposed to Indianapolis. Secondly, Shane Steichen. And you have to live by the rule and not the exception if you want to be successful in life. And yesterday they got away with one. Because they kind of got away with the exception, which was they did not manage the clock well, and I didn't think they play called well in the final stretch there. What did they go, 5 of 7 on the ground when you have, and you're trying to get it, and they got bailed out because of the penalty. But you cannot overlook the fact that that game could have been thrown away because they didn't throw the ball. And yes, I know that clock comes into play and you don't want Denver to have time to get the ball back. I get all of those things. And they had run the ball well. I get that as well. But when you have some of the weapons that the Colts have, notably Tyler Warren, and you're trying in the intermediary, and where in the world did this come from? Where all of a sudden now, like, Alec Pierce is not a long ball, but rather like an over-the-middle threat. And Josh Downs as well played really well. Goes without saying. Those, we've talked about it. I've mentioned it. For Daniel Jones, those layup rhythm guys are so important. And Daniel Jones has shown that he can be that just layup rhythm guy. And late in the game, when you need to just get, not 20, but just get a couple plays of 4 to 6 yards, 2 of them, to get you within the proper, more secure range, and they got away from that. And that certainly is something that, again, they got away with it yesterday, but I think you got to go with the rule as opposed to the exception. The rule is you go with what works for you, and I thought that was questionable. But in yin and yang conversation, if you are looking at Shane Steichen and you are properly analyzing and surveying it yesterday, you have to, again, go back to this. And I promise you, eventually this storyline, it's already starting to fade away a little bit. It's already starting to go away a little bit. And that's the storyline of the quarterback. This town now knows they are Daniel Jones believers, baby. Danny Dimes. This town believes in it, right? And the Shane Steichen, when he made that decision, it was not without scrutiny or controversy of going away from the big play of Anthony Richardson. But we are 2 games in now, and Anthony Richardson has become this, with the exception of maybe me on the radio, almost out of sight, out of mind. And what we saw yesterday was another example of Shane Steichen. And I'm going to spare, we're going to take away that last drive and the scrutiny thereof and the fair critique of the way they play called on that last possession. But for the majority of that game yesterday, what you again saw and what you're hoping for to be the case over the course of this season is a coach-quarterback combination that is working. And that it's working because they are playing within the parameters of what they need. And, a Ferrari is an unbelievable car. Precision, speed, 0 to 60 like nobody's business. But if you have a Ferrari and you're trying to drive it on 465 or, God forbid, any of the downtown streets yesterday with all the construction going on, then all of a sudden you punch it too heavy and it's, the back end steps out on you and you're Roberto Guerrero it. And I think that Anthony Richardson, to an extent, the way that he plays, that's what it is. You know that the potential is there for wide open, holy cow, sleek speed, and fabulous optics at quarterback. But when you are in traffic and you're just trying to keep things moving along, or if you're on the interstate at 70 miles an hour in the second to left lane, you just want to make sure that you're staying within your lane and that everything's running smoothly. And that's what Daniel Jones does, although he did air it out a little bit yesterday. He did show a little arm. But I think the marriage between Shane Steichen looked at this roster, looks at the weapons they have, between Taylor and Warren, and then Downs, and I guess you could now say Pierce as well, the way that they're kind of mixing him in there with the intermediary stuff. Daniel Jones is the guy that they know their success is just keeping it right there, straight and narrow, and not trying to get too fancy and hit the accelerator too fast where all of a sudden you spin out. And the marriage between the way that Shane Steichen is calling games and the way Daniel Jones is operating that offense, right now, through 2 games, it is working. And that shows why Shane Steichen was hired in that position, because he was hired because he was a quarterback's coach. And yes, it was a different quarterback that they thought they were going to be able to grow with. But yesterday, at the end of that game, represented so far what this franchise has done this year, and that is this. They had an opportunity to win that game with the field goal, and they missed. They had an opportunity to win that game with a kick that everybody knew. We don't know whether or not a guy's going to be able to hit from this far out, but if he does, man, it is going to be a storyline, and it's going to be electric, and the roof's going to blow off this place. And they missed. But they got a second lease. And they got a second lease with a kick that is a little more conservative, a little higher percentage, a little safer, because you move it up after the leverage play. And that symbolizes why the Colts are 2-0, because they had an opportunity with their coach, who is a quarterback whisperer, to win with a quarterback that everybody knew there was a risk and it wasn't the easiest. But if it hit, it was going to be electric, and it was going to be unique, and it was going to be a rare breed, and it was going to blow the roof off. And they selected Anthony Richardson and tried to make it work, and they missed. And then they got a second lease. And they got the second lease from Daniel Jones, who was available. They gave him a 1-year, $13 million deal. And 2 games does not a season make, but there's no reason to believe that with the protection that they're able to give him, with the running back behind him, and with the weapons that they have around him, that they are not able now to continue to do this. Now, Tennessee, and if you win that, you're 3-0, and then it gets a little more real, admittedly. But you have to win the games that you're supposed to win, and yesterday was one that was a 50-50 game. Now, Eddie, you and I are 2 of the, maybe 3 or 4 of us within the building here that selected the Colts to win that game. Is that right? It was about half and half, right?
I think it was pretty close to half and half, yeah.
But it was a great win for them. And we're going to talk plenty about it. I asked yesterday my proverbial question of, give me the 3 words. What is the 3-word headline?
It was you, me, James Boyd, Brendan King, and Nick Cotton Gym.
We are and I mean, everybody had it within a field goal either way. It's not like people were expecting them to get blown out. But that was a coin flip game, and I think it came down to, obviously, a coin flip situation. But when it came down to it, the Colts finally had football karma on their side, where this time they allowed the other team to make the mistake. And there are areas that they need to, and we will discuss. Joel Erickson is going to join us coming up here in about 35 minutes, and we'll go over and we'll discuss the areas where they could, potentially hurt themselves, or areas that they need to improve upon. But there's a lot to like about what happened yesterday as well. Tyler Warren continues to show. When I asked the question of, give me your 3 words to describe the way that you feel about the Colts through 2 games. And Jason Mamie, I hope I'm saying the last name correct, his 3 words, Warren as advertised. Totally agree. Totally agree. Dave Lindquist, fabulous music critic in town, also just overall good dude. Offensive weapons abound, he said. Totally agree.
I feel like Warren's even been better than as advertised.
That's fair.
Like, he played almost every snap offensively for them yesterday, and there were times where I was very, very impressed with his blocking, and that was the one knock on him outside of just how he would look in the open field at the NFL level. He made dudes miss in the open field yesterday. His blocking was terrific, and only going up from here.
You know, the thing about Tyler Warren to me that is the most impressive is not only how he is like this old school throwback tight end in terms of, you know, the Jeremy Shockey, Mark Bavaro run you over type guy, but also he has that Dallas Clark break, right, where he can do a quick turn and yard after catch. But in addition to that now, I think he has shown a pretty good ability to make the difficult on the run catch, right? Over the shoulder catch. I mean, he has receiver-like tendencies as well, and you can obviously slot him wherever you want. But it was yesterday we should celebrate all day, to be honest with you, because it's been a long time coming. There were records set. I mean, they set a record now. They are, the first team in the Super Bowl era to go 2 games without a punt. They set the record for most consecutive possessions with a resulting in scoring with 10 straight. Whoever would have guessed that? Whoever would have guessed it? But I think the thing is and yesterday, yes, the penalties are dangerous, but they are playing with a very clear understanding of their own limitation. And by understanding their own limitation, the Colts are expanding and breaking through and pushing even further out what their limitations are, because they are increasing the possibilities for them over the course of the year. We will talk plenty about it and the rest of the league coming up on the other side. Also college football to discuss. Indiana on Friday night. Now, Eddie, we both said that we expected them to double that point spread, right?
I thought I took them to cover, talking about Indiana, but you took
I took Indiana State.
You were taking Indiana State?
I was like, they'll get 10 points.
Yeah, you also took Cleveland to cover, and look how that turned out.
That looked okay for a long time there. And then Baltimore threw down the accelerator. But from a college standpoint, obviously, for Indiana now, big one coming up with Illinois. And we will talk about what we learned against Indiana State, how much you learned. I love Kurt Mallory, and I like Indiana State. But I don't know how much of that – did that game tell us more about Indiana or about the Sycamores? You know what I mean? I mean, that's –
I think that there's a third door that you didn't open, Jake, and it's nothing.
Yeah, we didn't learn anything, right?
I don't think we learned anything. I think it was more so, like Zach Osterman said on Friday, he was viewing the first 3 games of the season for IU as preseason games to kind of get them ready for the Big Ten schedule, to hopefully get guys into a bit of a groove, and hopefully that's the case, your first real test. I have to go back and find it. It was like first time since like the 19-something or another, it's a top 10 team is coming to Bloomington, and the Hoosiers are also ranked. Illinois, Saturday night, 7:30.
Illinois, what, 7th?
I think they're 9th.
Notre Dame is now 0-2.
They are 24th.
I saw that. And that was a fabulous game with Texas A&M. And, for the Fighting Irish, I mean, I still believe Notre Dame has a chance in the playoff, because if they win out from here out, but, now they have zero margin for error. But they're defensively, their susceptibility to big chunk plays, and A&M had some in-space guys as well that they took advantage of. But credit to Texas A&M. That's a tough environment, and late in that game to come in and get the touchdown they had on, I believe it was 4th, wasn't it? 4th and goal, with inside 15 seconds. But Notre Dame 0-2. And then Purdue, I thought Purdue actually, I love Ross 8 at night. I love it. And that's tough to sit there and have to go through that sort of a weather delay and then come back out and play the game. And I thought Purdue looked okay. I mean, they had one incredible, miraculous, play. The red zone deficiencies, and that's an area with the Colts as well that we can discuss, and that is getting into the red zone and not getting touchdowns out of it. In the Colts case, they make good on it because they at least get 3, but Purdue, in terms of red zone turnovers and areas that they never let it get totally away from them, which is good. And for Purdue, that is a step forward. Fever yesterday, obviously dropping in Atlanta. They are down now, Love 1 in the WNBA playoffs. They are here on Tuesday night in a must-win situation because it is best of 3, and we can get into that later as well. But when we return, I would like to know this from you. I will read off some of the 3-word answers on your impressions of the Colts through 2 games, and it's just 2 games. But we may as well celebrate it a little bit because it's been a long time. It's been since 2000. Celebrate it a little bit because it's been a long 2009 when the Colts started out 14-0. And it has been that long since you could say that they were, it was 11 straight years before they were even 1-0. So you now have a 2-0 football team. We should celebrate it. It's been a long time. Let's party like it's 2009, baby. Your thoughts on it as well on the other side. We will engage in that on a celebratory Monday for the Colts. 239-1070, the telephone number. That is the text line number. Joel Erickson coming up 1 o'clock today. Nick Cross, one of the defensive stars yesterday, going to join us 2 o'clock hour here. Monday edition. It is Query & Company on the Fan. Interesting when I looked this up. This is the last, or I should say, the song that was number one on the Billboard charts the last time the Colts started out 2-0. And the interesting fun fact about this song from the Black Eyed Peas is it remained number one for 14 weeks, which is the number of weeks the Colts were unbeaten in the 2009 NFL season. When they began 14-0.
So
right.
the week that it wasn't no longer number one, Jake, is the reason why the Colts obviously lost that game. Right.
That is exactly correct, yes.
That's why we went the tinfoil hat there.
So I could look up who it was that unseated them.
Wasn't it? Was it not the Jets?
Well, yes, it was the Jets for the Colts, but Down by Jay Scene featuring Lil Wayne was the song that unseated I Got a Feeling. Okay, 239-1070. If you got a feeling about the Colts, 239-1070. You can call in with your celebration. You can call in with your concern. You can call in to tell me that I am either too optimistic or pessimistic, whatever it may be. Before we do that, while you get a chance to call in, I will read off some of the great headlines that I asked yesterday. Your 3 words to describe the way that you're feeling about the Colts through 2 weeks of this football season. This from Brian Taylor. Correct quarterback decision. I like this from Caleb. AR at slot. You got to wonder how long it's going to be before that comes into play, right? This from Mo. Colts Christmas September. I'm telling you, people are pumped, right? But then again, who's your hardwood? His 3 words. Ready for letdown. Come on now. All right, 239-1070, the telephone number. Jonah. I knew Jonah would be lined up. What's up, Jonah?
Oh, what made you guess that one, Jake?
Were you at the game?
No, I was not. I had my daughter with me, so I didn't go to the game.
Okay, thoughts on it?
Well, there's a lot of reason to be optimistic. I mean, I don't think you're overly optimistic about it. We played Denver's defense that was ranked one of the best in the NFL and threw up over 400 yards total against them, which is a very promising sign. And I just love how our offense, the players know their roles. And, of course, you can't say enough about Tyler Warren. It's something the Colts have been missing for the last few years is a security blanket tight end. And not only a security blanket tight end, but in my opinion, he's going to be elite.
Well,
seeing that one catch. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Warren is already. I think he's already elite. Honestly, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I thought yesterday Zach Kiefer said it best. I appreciate the call, Jonah. Zach Kiefer said it best, where he was like, Tyler Warren is already a dude in this league. Yeah. I mean, honestly, yes.
It's week number 2, and you're putting Denver. They put the AP Defensive Player of the Year on him. They put Pat Surtain on Tyler Warren yesterday in his second professional game.
Yeah. I mean, look, like I said, he and that area, okay, he and that area of the field open up everything, right? That opens up everything for them in terms of offensively. And you could say that Daniel Jones, that they're being overly conservative, but you establish Warren early, and then what happens? Like, all of a sudden, everything is gravitated towards Warren, and you got to keep an eye on him. And then you get Alec Pierce streaking in, and then you get, you know what I mean, like everybody else that, Josh Downs. Yesterday, what was interesting was they brought Downs early into the mix. And if you look at Denver and the way they blitzed, Denver was able to, if there was an area of concern for the Colts, it would be the fact that their edge was very soft. And the Colts were able to get through and blitz, or excuse me, the Broncos were able to get through and blitz often. But Jones eventually was able to offset that by, yes, that heat was coming, but then he was immediately getting the quick release, and Downs is so big in that, and Pierce as well. And for what lack of protection they may have had, Daniel Jones' ability to quick think and get rid of the football was what was the difference in terms of being able to overcome that aggression from Denver's defense. Bo. Hey, Bo, what's up?
Not much. Thank you for taking my call. Love listening to your show.
Well, you and my mom, that's two people, Bo, and so that's appreciated. All right, what's on your mind?
So I don't want to be the poo-poo parade here, but I was at the game. I told my seatmate, my season ticket holder seatmate, that if we win the game by a field goal, and this was way before any of the end of the game drama, it'll feel like a loss to me. And the reason why is because of the lack of aggressiveness at the end. I know the media, everybody's high-fiving, everything's great. I can't wait to go to the next game myself. I'm amped up. But to the guy before that said waiting for the letdown, I feel like that's the reason why people are always waiting for the letdown. And it feels like it's all Indiana sports, to be honest, Purdue, IU, et cetera, that play not to win. They play, or not to lose, sorry, instead of to win the game. Shane wasn't aggressive enough in his play calling at the end of the game, and it was extremely disappointing to watch. I would also reference Jonathan Taylor's amazing run. The catch in the first half to run out of bounds or get hit out of bounds without trying to stay in bounds, that's fine. It's second quarter. There's a lot of game time left. When you are working and chipping away and getting 1, 2, 3 yard gains and then you break one, I want to see him lower his shoulder and try to get into the end zone as best as possible. If he doesn't, he doesn't. But I want to see the effort. I don't like Daniel Jones running out of bounds inside the 10-yard line without making the effort. Jonathan Taylor was there trying to block for him.
Bo, there is no doubt. You referenced, Bo, and I appreciate it, by the way. I appreciate the kind words as well. You referenced the college aspect of it in terms of like college football teams this weekend. One area, and I mentioned it earlier, you look at Purdue on Saturday night against USC. You look at the Colts yesterday. One thing that is a common thread amongst those two is you need to eventually begin with a higher rate on both sides. When you get in the red zone, you've got to capitalize it into touchdowns in today's NFL. You just do. And look, Denver is not. They're getting ready. They will see, the Colts will, some pretty potent offenses this year. I think the Chargers you could say that about. I think the Rams you could probably say that about. Kansas City, even though they're 0-2, I think, are they really going to continue the streak here where Patrick Mahomes has never beaten the Colts, and that's going to continue this year? but that's so far down the road, right?
I know.
So in those areas, you have to be able to capitalize and get maximum points when they are available to you there. We'll continue the conversation with it. Mo, stick around. Rob, stick around. Joel Erickson coming up in 18. So the Colts, unblemished through 2 games. It is Christmas in September, according to our next caller, Mo, who joins us. 239-1070, the telephone number. Joel Erickson in 12. Mo, what's up?
Not a whole lot. It's just a wonderful day. I just get through a couple things. It's pretty neat up here in Northwest Ohio, where I'm about the only Colts fan, and everybody else is Lions and Tigers and Bears and oh my and all that. But we're pretty high here.
Now
I wanted to give
go ahead.
I wanted to give a couple. First off, the negatives. There were some negatives. Obviously, all games. This is like the first 3 or 4 games are like preseason games in a sense, until you get things worked out. And we had a lot of penalties and mistakes, and probably the last at the end of the game, they kind of took the keys away from Jones and kind of got a little bit conservative. But there were too many more positives, like Amarumo's adjustment to when Howard was getting cooked a little bit. He did some things, and we hadn't seen that on the defensive end for a long time. And I think he did some things to take care of that. The biggest thing was the Colts' will to fight. And they got down, and they kept fighting back, and they did it the whole game. And then the other one was the fans were awesome from beginning to end, and they just stayed in it. They didn't leave early. They were there to the end, and that was just awesome. It was crazy just leaving the place and getting out in the streets of how packed it was at 7, 8 o'clock at night.
Now, part of that, Mo, part of the reason it's so packed is because 78% of the streets in downtown Indianapolis are now closed due to construction. That's part of why the streets were so packed. I kid. No, listen. You're right about especially Shane Steichen late going conservative, taking the keys, if you will, a little bit out of Daniel Jones' hands. He had basically said, and I do get this thought, which was I didn't want to give Denver a chance to get the ball back and come down and convert, right? Or, I wanted to take it down to and I get it. I want to take this down to the absolute final play. And it comes down to which do you think gives yourself the better odds? Do you feel better about kicking, say, a 55-yarder, or do you feel better about your defense not getting Denver back in position to win the game? And that's, it's kind of like fouling up 2 or up 3. You know what I mean? In basketball. Which way do you feel better about it? And I understand Shane Steichen. I'm not saying he's right, and I understand the critique of it, but I also get him thinking to himself, we put ourselves in better position. If I look at Schrader, and I know he's kicking a 55-plus yard field goal, I like our chances at that better than I do at this point the way I feel about our defense not letting them, through a couple of quick strikes, get back into field goal range themselves. That clearly was his thought process. Terry, your thoughts?
Jake. 2 things. Number one thing you don't do in the NFL is let a dangerous team hang around. And Colts may be dangerous. 2, the reason we go to these games is we want to be entertained. And I got to tell you, the last 2 games, the blowout against Miami and the nail-biter yesterday, I was entertained the whole time, shouting the whole time, booing referees like I've never booed before for those no calls, and then calling us against a pass interference. It was fun. That's why we go.
Yeah, that's cool. And Terry, to be fair, and I don't mean this – not because they weren't winning, but there had been, I think, at times some doldrums in that building where it just got stale over the last couple of years. I don't mean that to pile on of it not being fun, but there were times where, like, just that overall, you are correct, and Mo mentioned it too. There was a vibe and an energy even before the win yesterday that I don't think we've had in a while, right?
We always had a chance that whole game.
Yeah. That's fair. And again, I think it's because they had some penalties, 11 of them, right? And they hurt themselves a lot in different occasions. But I do think that in the end, you have this weird growing, and it's just 2 games. but you have kind of a weird growing feeling that they have an offensive competency about them that they have enough weapons and enough different ways to move the football that they've got a chance. They've got to capitalize in the red zone, though. They just do. I mean, that's the biggest thing. The red zone stuff, when you're down there and you're that close, man, you got to take advantage because you just don't know how many chances you're going to get. Trucker Rob, to round us out. What's up, Rob?
What's going on? This is how we celebrate, baby.
Yeah. I love it, man. I love it. 10-2 on the road, Rob. Were you at the game yesterday?
Yes, I was. I won tickets from John's show, thanks to him, and had a really nice time. Took Miss Maya, which she loves you, by the way. She thinks you're great, so,
Well, she and I have that in common.
Yeah, I think I talked her finally in on a side note to go see your cardiologist for a second opinion on her heart stuff, but yeah, we went to the game. I'm sitting there at the end of the game, and, I got up. I thought, well, we lost it. And then I said, no, wait a minute. There's laundry on the field. And, it was like you watch this quick turnaround of, okay, you think we lost it, and then we won it. And it was great, man. I mean, what more can you say, You talked about the Anthony Richardson thing and how that seems to be like it's in the rearview mirror. We got Daniel Jones, a resurgence, and why not? Why can't a guy that's had the kind of career that he's had, why can't he have a resurgence? Why can't it be the Colts? You know what I'm saying? Why can't it be us?
Rob, here's the bottom line. When it comes to Daniel Jones, now what's Daniel Jones' nickname other than Danny Dimes, Eddie? I just came up with the shirt right here. You ready?
Dimes. That's his nickname. Dimes.
But if you're going to go with, you're right. I mean, it's Danny Dimes, right?
Indiana Jones.
So why not Indiana? Why not Indiana Jones, baby? Why not Indiana? And, if you look at everybody wanted a Sam Darnold type rebound year for him, for Daniel Jones. And I don't know whether or not we are in the midst of seeing that before our very eyes, but it certainly, you feel good about the start of it at this point. And I think a big part of it is because the Colts have been able to schematically come up with plays that benefit him, and they also have the personnel around him to benefit him.
I also think, Jake, the fact that we're starting to see this confidence in himself again to where he's willing to throw the football down the field.
And his, they had one play, and sometimes it was tough to tell. There was one where I was like, was that an option run for the quarterback, a designed run for him, or did he just and then I thought maybe it was it looked like, I think it was Mo Alley Cox might have been designed to break, and instead he held onto a block, and so Jones just ran it. This was in the first quarter. But he does have the ability to kind of extend plays via his legs. And I love that they're using Alec Pierce now in different ways, and that becomes interesting too, because Alec Pierce is a guy that if he was going to be strictly a long ball guy and he's in a contract year, does he start looking elsewhere? But now you're incorporating him more into almost like a Brandon Stokely type role. And I don't say that because they're short, little, strong, fast white guys. Just the areas, the operating areas you're using him, and not just long ball stuff, but across the middle, things like that. So there were a lot of things to be positive about. There are things that need to be cleaned up. We will discuss some of those as well with Joel Erickson from the Indy Star, and we'll do it next. If you're looking for a nickname that could stick for Danny Dimes in Indy, that's a New York nickname, right? That's the nickname he got in New York. So why not Indiana? Trademark. Right? Daniel Jones doing it again. Colts now 2-0. First time since 2009 that Indianapolis has gotten out to that start through 2 weeks. In that year, they started out 14-0 before losing to the New York Jets. That was there were fairly famous moments and criticisms of the way that they handled that game. But they are now 2-0. Part of it comes by way of a field goal that had to have reminded everybody, speaking of the Colts' glory years of yesteryear, glory days of yesteryear, the Tampa Bay Monday Night Miracle game. That is literally the only other time that I can recall leveraging, leaping. I mean, both of them involve a player trying to elevate himself to block a kick and using a teammate to do so. But the Colts got a second lease. They took advantage of it, and they got the win yesterday. Joining us now to talk about that and more, he is from the Indianapolis Star, and Joel Erickson is his name. Joel, by the way, did you happen to see, what did the Brewers clinch over the weekend?
Just postseason, just a playoff berth.
Did you see is it Ken Rosenthal? Is that his name that does baseball?
I did. He ran over the Brewers team photographer and then stared him down.
And here's the thing, and this is the only thing that I could take from that. For those that are unfamiliar, and we will get to the Colts in a second, but Joel is a Brewers fan. Ken Rosenthal was getting ready to conduct an interview with a Brewers player, in which then there was like a Gatorade shower. Rosenthal jumped out of the way, and in doing so, knocked over a photographer of the team, and then literally stared him down like Ali over Sonny Liston. And the only thing I could think is that Ken Rosenthal's a little fella, and so perhaps that's the only time that he gets that opportunity. Is that what that came down to?
I actually, right before I came on, I saw that he apologized on one of the popular baseball shows for it. But yeah, it looks pretty bad.
It's a bad look. I mean, he looks like a complete.
He's like shaking his head as he walks away.
Oh yeah, I mean he like stares him down. You are correct, right? It's like
it's a bad look. This is the most. If listeners ever wonder if sports writers are fans or not, this will give them the clue. Ken Rosenthal doesn't like the Brewers. He doesn't. It's very evident in the way he reports stuff. And so anytime he goes to Milwaukee, something bad seems to happen.
Okay, fair enough. Well, maybe that's the reason for the stare down. All right, let's begin with this, Joel. I thought yesterday, I talked about it plenty in the first hour, my thoughts on it. But I want to know, because we've talked about the first third of the show here, all of the positives and the excitement and the mojo and the juju and the fans and everything from yesterday. What are areas that are of concern? If there's something that we look back on in, say, late October, early November, and say, there were warning signs, the football gods were trying to show us, what is it yesterday, if anything, that jumps out that is an area that Shane Steichen still needs to work on in the lab?
Pass rush. Pass rush is not good so far through the first 2 weeks. They got some sacks off the blitz against the Dolphins. But yesterday, I think the stat I saw was that Nix was only pressured twice. It looked to me like the Broncos' entire strategy was just, let's put as many big people as we can on DeForest Buckner, and we'll just assume no one else can beat us. And they were right. I think the pass rush, I know Latu was out, but realistically, other than him being a first-round pick, we don't have a long – lengthy history of him being a game wrecker in the pass rush and kind of opening things up for everybody else. So, I think the pass rush is a big concern moving forward.
The other side of that would be this. Denver was able to, and it was blitzing mostly. I mean, they were super aggressive, especially early on. But through the first half of that game, I thought Denver was able to kind of collapse the edge for the Colts as well. And really, now, Jones did a really good job of being able to, in rhythm, get rid of the ball and not fall victim to it. But is there an area of concern also of their ability to, or inability to stop the pass rush?
I think that you kind of expect Denver to rush the passer like that.
Well, yeah, their blitz rate, I mean, in week 1 was really high as well, right?
Yeah, and they just have like Miami runs a really high blitz rate, but Denver just has better players. Zach, like Allen, Benito, those guys are better players than what Miami has to offer. So that's a pass rush that I think is going to age pretty well. I know, like from the Denver side of things, the Broncos writers were like, can't believe they didn't get very much pressure on the Colts at all. Which to me, I was with you. I felt like Jones, kind of had to. I was impressed with the way Jones avoided it by getting the ball out of his hands. But the Denver writers are apparently used to seeing, a little bit more from the pass rush in their game. So I think that one might just be a matchup dependent type thing.
Joel, have you ever been to Napanee, Indiana? I know you're a Wisconsin guy, but Napanee's up north. You ever been are you familiar with Napanee, Indiana?
I am not.
Okay. Napanee, Indiana is a beautiful, wonderful community up in northern Indiana. It is predominantly Amish, okay? I don't know like what percentage, but let's just say for the sake of this entirely. But, I mean, it's very high Amish population, okay? So I would like to know this. Which guy do you think has an easier gig? The guy that's in charge of owning a lawnmower repair shop in Napanee, Indiana, or Rigoberto Sanchez?
Well, it might be the mower repair shop because the Notre Dame game would suggest that holding for kicks is harder than and more important than we give it credit for.
Okay, that's fair. You know what? Because Sanchez, that is his one important area right now. The question would be this. Even though the Colts now have gone through 2 games without using Rigoberto Sanchez from a punting standpoint, that is a Super Bowl era record in the National Football League through 2 weeks. But he is their holder. Are they going to eventually, are they playing with fire with the number of times that they end up using him as the field goal holder as opposed to extra point holder in the red zone? Is that going to be a bugaboo that they need to figure out?
Yes. Yeah. That's the one, I think that's the one legitimate quibble with the offense so far is just that it's just way too many field goals. My initial thought yesterday, and this is kind of where I still am, is that when you get down in the red zone and if teams are blitzing like Miami and Denver like to blitz, then there's less room for those routes that Jones wants to go to right away. Although the flip side of that is I think Jones just kind of some of his missed throws were under pressure were kind of in that territory. But yeah, they've got to figure it out. They've got to figure out a way to be. I think it might just be as simple as maybe the running game gets a little bit more work in there. Whether that's Taylor or whether that's Jones or bringing in Anthony Richardson for something, I don't know. But I think maybe that seems like the obvious solution. But yes, they need to score more touchdowns and less field goals because realistically, for a significant part of that game, it felt like Denver was pretty much in control of it, and they shouldn't have been because the Colts were just rattling off yardage way more than Denver was.
I look at this. Joel Erickson is our guest from the Indianapolis Star. He is the Colts beat writer. And when I look at it, I think about, you are correct. When you get in the red zone, Richardson would give you different looks. I get that, okay? But I just don't think you can do it. Joel, you talk me off this ledge here of me being, and tell me why I'm wrong. But when you do the whole deal of we've got a quarterback that we're going to ride until we get into a certain area, and at that point we're going to then put in another quarterback because, wow, he gives a completely different look or he can do – first off, when you do that, everybody knows why Richardson would be on the field, right?
Yeah.
I mean this is no disrespect to Anthony Richardson. But it's over. Barring injury, it's over, right?
Yeah, you're right. The Wildcat thing, and realistically, the Wildcat thing, if you look at it, it doesn't work as well in the NFL as it works in college. Bringing in a guy whose primary job is to take the snap and run with it, it doesn't work as well as it does in college for whatever reason. Probably because the NFL game is so much more predicated on knowing what your opponent is doing. But yeah, I mean, the other thing is if you ask me who I would rather have making decisions in the passing game in the red zone, it's Jones by a significant margin. So you know, well, you were talking about that. I was like, I don't know. I kind of agree with Jake here. If you're bringing him, I think you just figure it out with the guys you have there, and outside of, I don't know, some trick play that would probably end up making most people upset. I don't know that maybe there is a role there.
Joel, when you were a kid, did anybody ever tell you, like a teacher, that like a rule for life, or like, you know, life will go well so long as you follow? Like I always say, you know, try to live by the rule and not the exception. Or, you know, was there any sort of like little piece of advice that a teacher or a parent or somebody gave you that was the key to success for you?
I don't know. Nothing is jumping to my mind.
Okay. Well, I have one for you now. You're how old a fella?
I am 39.
Okay, 39. Well, it's listen, to figure this out at 39 is, you know, young Jedi is you know, I mean, you still got 39 more years you can use it. Typically, if you just think to yourself, I kind of agree with Jake, things are going to go very well for you. Just so you know. I mean, you know, I realize, you know, you're very well established in your career here, but if there are new heights you want to go, just go with that. You know what I mean?
You know, the more I hear with this stuff Jake Query is saying, the more it sounds good.
Most people go running and screaming in the totally opposite direction. But if you want to stick with that and let me know how that works for you, that'd be good, right? Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I'm on board.
Hey,
yeah.
Did they yesterday, Alec Pierce, in terms of, I was mentioning, you know, they it's almost like they reinvented him yesterday. I know that sounds crazy, but Alec Pierce, we had just resigned ourselves to the fact that he was the behind the defense, breakaway, long ball threat guy. And then yesterday, they started with downs. It was Warren in week one, where let's get like the rhythm, short yardage passer and get that receiver going. And it was Warren in week one. Then yesterday, they did it with downs. A couple of, you know, those over the middle of short throws on the first couple of drives. And Josh Downs, there was one play actually where I wondered if Downs didn't get dinged up a little bit. But then they got Alec Pierce involved in that game, and that seemed to be a new wrinkle. Now, was that out of necessity? Was that out of just a look that Shane Steichen saw? Or is this something that we're going to see more of from Pierce as we move along?
So Alec Pierce himself has kind of said all offseason that he wants to be able to give them that option more than he has before. But I also would say, beyond just Pierce saying that, I would say if you went back and watched training camp, and you know, a lot of times you watch training camp and it doesn't mean anything, but with Alec Pierce, a lot of the catches he had in training camp were some of the stuff we saw yesterday, those crossers, those shorter throws, and really, I think if he can develop into that and do that, it makes things much more difficult on the defense, because you can't really play him at the line. If you play him at the line, you are asking to get burnt over the top. And so if the Colts are using him in some of that short yardage stuff, I think it makes it much more difficult on the defense. But yeah, that's something that I kind of wrote down in my notebook as, you know, Alec Pierce is catching a lot of, you know, comeback type plays, crossers, that kind of thing, instead of just always the deep ball in training camp. And it kind of manifested itself yesterday.
Sorry about that, Joel, how big a concern is I'm going to say the corner play? Now, I thought Nick Cross was really good in the safety spot. You know, they do have some players in their defensive backfield, but they've obviously been hurt by injury with Ward out and Jones out. I think we saw yesterday how important Ward is. Late addition of Xavier Howard, and I thought obviously he really struggled yesterday. How big a concern is that room having to kind of plot its way through until it's 100% again?
I'm a little concerned, you know, mainly because it feels like Howard is, at least in the coaching staff's mind, the definitive starter on the outside out there. And, you know, he didn't play last year. Obviously had a very rough day yesterday. It felt to me like the Broncos were targeting him from my time covering the Saints in New Orleans. I know that usually when Sean Payton targets someone, it's for a reason. I'm interested in Mekhi Blackman. I didn't notice him a ton yesterday. I might have to go back and look at it. But you know, that spot, that outside corner spot, it was supposed to go Justin Wally. I wonder if they're going to spend some time here, or if they're going to have to spend some time here trying to find the right answer to it. Because the one that we kind of all thought in the offseason was going to be the answer is Jalen Jones, and he's dealing with a hamstring injury that just will not stay away. And then you've got Blackman, who they like, and they think of him as a speed option, but he kind of he struggled enough with Minnesota that they gave up, that they were willing to trade him. And then you've got Howard, who yesterday looked very limited. I think that outside corner spot is something to circle going forward, because like when Ward is back, and you assume Ward will be back soon. I don't know how soon, because concussions are notoriously difficult to predict. But once Ward's back, you feel good about his side, but what if teams just don't throw at his side?
Right.
What if teams do what the Broncos did yesterday in the first half, and they just keep hammering away at the other side of the field?
Do you think, Joel A. Erickson is our guest from the Indianapolis Star, is Shane Steichen schematically lifting Daniel Jones, or is Daniel Jones' play lifting the scheme of Shane Steichen?
I would say Daniel Jones' play is illuminating the scheme of Shane Steichen.
Okay.
I think this is what he is able to do. What his reputation is in the NFL is, this is a guy who's going to find stuff that gives your defense fits, so that your defense isn't good at. But the hard part about that is you have to have a quarterback who sees the game the same way and can take advantage of that stuff. And Anthony Richardson was just frankly not able to do that, or always able to do that, or that maybe not his approach in terms of the way he quarterbacked it, in terms of being in lockstep with Shane Steichen. Jones is taking advantage of all that stuff. Like, I think that little flip to Taylor yesterday, that's a play that I have been told for almost as long as I've covered the league, that the key to running backs catching the ball out of the backfield for big yardage is that the quarterback has to know it, has to get there right away. And that sounds very simple, but it's not really, because a lot of times you think of the running back as the check down, and you wait, and you hold on to it, and then, I don't have anything, I'm going to throw it to the running back. Jones goes to the running back early, and if you do that, you have Jonathan Taylor out in space against guys who can't run with him, and that's a scheme type of thing that I think sometimes took a little longer than it had to last year or the year before. Whereas so far, Jones is getting it out there. And so it's illuminating that Shane Steichen has answers for a lot of the stuff the defense is doing. They just didn't always get to them before.
Do you, by the way, Joel, what year is this for you covering the Colts?
This is the 8th season.
Okay. So you have been covering them. I'm going to name a quarterback, and you tell me if it's a quarterback you covered, okay? I mean, obviously Richardson. Mm-hmm. My years all run together, so bear with me here. Joe Flacco, right?
Yep.
Carson Wentz?
Yep.
Phillip Rivers?
Yep.
Obviously Luck, right?
Yep.
I don't know if you know or not. He retired early, and
he did.
Yeah,
that was a very surprising night.
Seemed to surprise people. Okay, so who am I missing here in terms of Matt Ryan, obviously. Okay.
Yep.
So that's the core, okay? I might have missed one here and there. I mean, I realize Sam Ehlinger, Nick Foles, a couple games here and there.
Jacoby.
But Jacoby Brissett, okay, that's a good one. In terms of those guys, and I know that it's very early, but for a lot of those quarterbacks, Rivers, for example, was the COVID year, so we didn't really get to know Phillip Rivers. But in terms of those guys, where would you slot or describe or compare and contrast Daniel Jones, not as a quarterback, but just in terms of his personality, in terms of what you can kind of see of it, the interaction with his teammates, the personality of joking around in the locker room or not, or is he all business, etc.? How would you describe him for our listeners who are fans of the Colts but don't yet totally know Daniel Jones?
I think, if we're talking about off the field, the guy that comes to mind is Matt Ryan. And I don't know if the way the 2022 season went will make fans hear that and kind of vomit in their mouths. But the Colts really loved Matt Ryan. Even though Ryan, well, he was a nice enough guy, you know, in interactions with the media, he didn't really say all that much. It's kind of, you know, that's kind of like the starting quarterback playbook type of thing. You know, you're not supposed to say a lot publicly. But Jones strikes me as that type of guy. Jones, he's not a guy who's easy to quote. He's not giving us a lot of stuff. Like Phillip Rivers said something every week that you were like, well, that's the lead to a story, or sometimes that's the whole story. Jones is not going to be like that. Matt Ryan wasn't really like that. But if you watch him or you talk to the players, you know, it feels like everyone on the team who golfs has golfed with Daniel Jones since he got here. He took the alignment out to dinner. You know, he got back to his locker after his press conference yesterday, and there were a couple guys coming up, you know, just to congratulate him, dap him up, give him a, you know, one of those bro hug type things that you see. It strikes me as very Matt Ryan-ish, very professional. There's a lot of respect for like what time he gets there, all of the work he puts in. All that stuff was true of Phillip Rivers, but Phillip Rivers is a larger personality in a lot of good ways, and a lot of ways the Colts loved. I think of Jones more like Matt Ryan.
You know, Jones, and part of it may be, when I say this, it's going to sound really weird. Daniel Jones, like his eyes look perpetually dilated. And I mean that, I'm not trying to be funny. Like he has darker eyes, so he always looks kind of wide-eyed. He always looks kind of in shock of what the moment is in terms of his physical appearance strictly. But does he appear to you, and sometimes you can tell in a press conference setting or more so in the media scrum when everybody's crowded around a guy and they're peppering him with questions. You can kind of tell when a guy's not a quick processor. Does Daniel Jones appear to be a quick processor?
I think yes, and I think that Jones in press conferences is consciously trying to figure out what, like, I think he's very quickly going through what he wants to say, but more importantly what he does not want to say. You know, I thought the answer he gave to ESPN Stephen Holder yesterday about, you know, is there a sense of satisfaction after everybody said that you couldn't play? And he said maybe a little bit, like the look in his eyes was, there's more here, but I'm not ready to let anybody in on that yet. And so I think he's kind of doing the thing where he is. The words that come out are one thing, but I think he is sifting through what he wants to say, what he doesn't want to say, and like I said, significant emphasis on what he does not want to say at this point.
Which, I mean, I guess part of that shows, you know, an emotional intelligence to an extent, right? To be able to process through of what is going to, you know, not everything needs to be said. You know what I mean? I mean, I think that was, again, I hate doing this because, Joel, this is beyond just making everything a comparison between Jones and Richardson, because we're past that now. But I think that was kind of part of Anthony Richardson's problem was, and yes, it's unfair because we're like, hey, man, like, give us an answer here, give us a soundbite. But I thought Richardson at times was too honest, right? And showed a lack of maturity in understanding how to answer those questions. You agree with that?
Yeah, and I think that's another thing that sticks out to me is that Jones I think Jones really understands how this works. He has said 2 weeks in a row now, like, yeah, this is great, but I think this league, you know, some version of this league, it matters if I do it over and over and over again, and it doesn't matter if I do it for 1 week. And I think that's something that, you know, he was in New York. He was in New York for 6 years. I don't know that he was ever known as like a super forthcoming type of individual, but he was in New York for 6 years, and I think that probably teaches you something about public perception and how the NFL is going to be, because that's where he goes to every time. Anthony's younger, and I do think sometimes Anthony answered questions without maybe realizing oh, people are going to take this the wrong way.
I mean, what the repercussions were going to be, or the magnitude of what he was going to say, right?
Yeah. I mean, like even even stuff like, you know, his back injury last year. You know, he mentioned it was a disc issue. Like, that's honest, and there's nothing wrong with being honest. But generally, I would prefer honesty in them. But it turned into this huge issue. And I'm sure he didn't want it to.
I know we're on the way back here, but didn't Richardson say this is a back issue that I've had since high school or something like that? Which is like, whoa, you know? I mean, yeah. I mean, that is an alarm bell for certain. All right, Joel Erickson joining us, Indianapolis Star, where you can get all of the coverage for the Colts. Colts now 2-0. Joel, appreciate it as always, man.
You bet. Thanks for having me on.
Good luck to your Brewers, by the way, 91-59. I think Milwaukee is. And they have clinched. You know, the one thing, Eddie, this is an unpopular opinion about baseball. There's one thing in baseball that drives me insane, and it's I go on this rant every year.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you what it is, and I can guarantee you're going to disagree with me.
All righty.
And I will let you folks hear from Daniel Jones as well on where they are exactly right now, and Shane Steichen as well from their thoughts on yesterday. We'll play that for you upcoming. Heck yeah. Little Dexy's Midnight Runners. All right, I'm going to play for you some interesting comments from both Shane Steichen and Daniel Jones coming up just a second. Technically, Eddie will be the one playing it. But here is my annual late summer, early autumn baseball guy yelling at clouds. I can't be the only one here. Can't be the only one. But I'm going to give my opinion, and then you tell me how unpopular it would be. Or it will be. If you watch the NBA playoffs, the Indiana Pacers had an unbelievable first-round series against the Milwaukee Bucks. Bobby Portis chance, Halliburton heroics, fabulous. They win, and they advance. Cleveland Cavaliers, great series. Some injuries to the Cavs. Garland was hurt. Mobley's a great player. Huge blowout win at one point. Donovan Mitchell at one point was unstoppable. Halliburton with the incredible finish to steal one of the games. You win, survive and advance. Go on, take on the Knicks. Big-time series. Pacers, Knicks, Pacers, and Racers. NFL playoffs. Last year, the Kansas City Chiefs went to the Super Bowl, won the AFC. They beat, if I'm not mistaken, Buffalo in the AFC title game, right? And I can't recall, Eddie, do you remember who either of those two teams beat in the divisional round?
Buffalo beat Baltimore because
right?
Mark Andrews dropped the ball.
That's
that
right.
would have won the game for the Ravens. And then the Eagles, are you talking about, wait, who was it?
Kansas City.
Kansas City, they would have had to beat Houston.
Okay.
Because Houston won.
Why is it in Major League Baseball, all those things that we just mentioned, all those games we just mentioned, it drives me bonkers how in baseball you have two teams that will play a, one-game wild card round? Is that right? They still do it that way?
I think so.
Aren't there two that get it? And they do a champagne spray and a full clubhouse celebration for winning a wild card round.
Because you're officially in the postseason. You're officially in the playoffs.
Okay.
You don't celebrate making it into the playoffs?
Did the Pacers, when they clinched a playoff berth? It's a long season. Did they do a champagne celebration?
I don't think they did because they were there last year. And they never celebrated much along the way either.
No team does.
Well,
there
that's
is no
not
team
factually correct either. Like you look at the Thunder, they celebrated after winning the Western Conference Finals. They popped champagne and all that.
The conference finals, yes.
Pacers didn't do that.
Let me finish. There is no team, to my knowledge, in the NBA or the NFL that celebrates any locker room, live champagne, wearing the goggles celebration until the round that advances them to the NBA Finals or the Super Bowl. The preliminary playoff rounds or even the solidifying yourself into the playoffs, no team does it in either sport. It's a baseball-only thing. The wild card round, and I get it. You play 100 and what? I mean, it's a long season. I get it. Maybe to make the play, to win your division, I think if you win your division, if you clinch the division in baseball, it's pretty cool. But then once you get into the postseason, anything shy of the pennant, to me, I will give you win your division. But winning a wild card round, winning a divisional round, you've already done it. You won your division, celebrate, that's cool. And if you win the pennant, celebrate, that's cool. But the other rounds, the wild card round notably, and the divisional round, if the Colts get into the wild card, if they clinch a wild card spot, if in week 17 the Colts have to beat the Houston Texans to get in as a wild card and they beat them, do they do a champagne celebration? Then they get in the wild card round and they play Denver in Denver and they beat them. Do they do a champagne celebration? Then they go on to the divisional round, and in the divisional round, they defeat Cincinnati. Do they do a champagne celebration? No. They don't do it in any of those unless they win the AFC. So you disagree with my take, Eddie?
Yeah, I disagree with your take.
So what makes baseball different than...
I mean, if you want to celebrate. I mean, I don't look at anyone any differently for not celebrating. I mean, if they want to celebrate, fine.
But
I mean,
what I'm saying... No.
It's a 162-game season. Yeah, you made the playoffs. Congrats if you're one of the two teams.
Okay.
You know, if you're the Reds and the Giants and you're battling for that last playoff spot by doing a one-game play-in scenario, like a play-in tournament type, and you win, sure, celebrate.
But you already celebrated to the fact that you get to that one game. You already did a whole celebration that you got into the wild card round. Then you win your wild card game, your wild card tiebreaker, and you're going to celebrate again and then go in and celebrate the wild card. Like, baseball's the only sport that does it that way. And I get it. It's a longer regular season. I get that. But you already celebrated when you clinched a postseason berth. Then you celebrate that you clinched the tiebreaker. Then you celebrate that you clinched the wild card. I mean, when did the other two? It's very defined, and it is not a. In the other two sports, it's not a team by team basis. It's basically a protocol of the conference championship and the title.
I wonder if there's some sort of like a sponsorship with one of the beer providers.
Actually, there was last year, was there not? Because I think it was like Mick Ultra that was what they were handing out.
It was either Mick, before it's been Budweiser, yeah. Bud Light.
In St. Louis, I can assure you it would have been Budweiser or Busch or whatever else. But it was all champagne. When I was covering the Cardinals, it was all champagne. And it was when they won the division, they did it. But different era back then. You didn't have the – well, I take that back. The Cardinals, when they won the division, and I was covering it, did it. And then they won the wild card round over Atlanta and did it again. And then they got beat in the NLCS by the Mets. To me, again, long season, I get it. And if you want to do it because you are advancing into the postseason, fine. But then after that, it's like, wait till you win your conference or your league, your pennant. Shane Steichen said something interesting regarding Daniel Jones, and Daniel Jones had interesting things to say as well. We'll let you hear from both next. So the baseball playoffs now are a best of three. There's no more of the one-game play-in, right?
No.
So there's 12 teams. The bottom two wild cards play one another. The third wild card, the top wild card, the top two wild cards play each other. The third seed goes against the lowest divisional winner, correct?
Third seed, third division winner faces the 6th seed, the lowest wild card team. The 4th seed, the second wild card team, will face the 5 seed, which is the first wild card team.
This from Jalen at text 239-1070. Jake, you're driving me up the wall with this rant. I get it. I guess my only question of it is, why does Major League Baseball do it differently than every other league? That's it. That's simply my question. Yesterday, towards the end of the game, something interesting that happened. And let's set up for you why I found it interesting. Let's begin with Daniel Jones. Jones, I think by all account, was kind of the surprise name as the starter going into week one, and people were very curious as to whether or not that was because Daniel Jones won the job or Anthony Richardson lost it. And, obviously the Colts were very effective in week one against Miami, but we questioned also Miami's defense and overall quality of the Dolphins. Jones was again yesterday, right from the get-go, I thought was extremely effective. And you could make the argument even was a step progressed from the Miami game because he had to handle a much more aggressive defense in Denver, a faster blitzing defense, a defense that forced him into quick decisions, and he made consecutively the quick decisions. Here is Daniel Jones yesterday talking about his comfort level and if, in fact, he is feeling more comfortable now as the quarterback of the Colts.
I don't know. I think I don't know how much time I've spent comparing it to, times in the past or different situations I've been in, but I feel confident and there's a great energy about our team, I think, about our offense, about our group. I think we're executing at a high level. I think there's still things we need to do better. I think, you look at some of the red zone stuff today and, things we can sharpen up down there, things I can sharpen up for sure. But yeah, I think collectively as a group, we're confident about what we can be, and we know that we're still growing and developing.
Okay, here's what's interesting about that. Nothing that really jumps out at you there is like, those are all encouraging things that he said. He said all the right things. Shane Steichen was then asked about just the overall play of Daniel Jones and also, the reliability, if you will, of Daniel Jones. Here is Shane Steichen critiquing Daniel Jones yesterday.
I thought he was efficient, taking his reads, going through his progressions. The ball placement was good again. I don't know what he completed. What was he today? 25 of 34, 107 QB rating, 1 touchdown. Like I said, I think the O-line did a hell of a job. I thought all the receivers did a nice job. Tyler Warren did a nice job. It was just efficient all around.
Totally agree with that. And when he talks about the placement, Dominic Miranda, who you hear on Fridays on the morning show with the guys, posted a video the other day at the end of practice or during a practice, I guess, that just said, hey, the Colts quarterback's getting ready to rounding out their week of practice. And it's Daniel Jones is rolling out and he throws just a fairly routine pass. And then Richardson is the next and he sails it like 8 feet over the guy's head. And Richardson then runs and kind of playfully is like hitting himself on the head. And that went semi-viral there. Ball placement is so important. And, what did C.J. Stroud say about himself? That he's a ball placement expert. But
Specialist,
thank you. Late in the game, though, the Colts found themselves in position with the football with a chance. And they went extremely conservative in their play call. And they ran the ball 5 of 7 plays, including on third down that pushed them back, and then lined up for a 55-yard field goal. Okay? This is Shane Steichen after the game explaining the rationale of calling the game the way he did offensively.
We were in field goal range there, felt good about it, and then on that third down, obviously we went backwards there on that one. But yeah, I mean, that's football sometimes. Obviously, yeah, we got the penalty that helped us out and found a way to win it there.
Were you trying to make sure there's no clock left for Denver?
Yeah, because, I don't want to get into it, but yes. Yeah, I don't want any time left on that clock.
It's never an ideal situation, but kind of what was the thought process at the end? That's not what you want, right? I mean, what are you weighing there, I guess?
Yeah, I guess I'll get into it. Whatever is the kickoff there at the end, you know what I mean? You don't want to let them get a return there. That's why.
Okay. Several years ago, and there's a reason I'm bringing this up because I find this interesting. Several years ago, everybody here would remember when the New England Patriots, at the peak of the rivalry, went for it on a fourth down play against the Colts, and the Colts got a stop. It was 4th and 2, I believe, was what it was, and Belichick goes for it. And the Colts get the stop, and everybody then questioned why in the world did Belichick go for it on 4th and 2 in that situation and let the Colts get the stop that wins them the game. And it was going, and I remember at the time, I was like, yeah, that was the right call, because what that meant was that is the ultimate sign of respect from Bill Belichick to, they go to Kevin Falk on that play, right? And the Colts come up and they end up getting a stop. And Melvin Blewett, I think, was the one Melvin Bullock, excuse me, is the one that came in and made that stop. And you forget about Melvin Bullock because he was a good player, and then I think it was a shoulder injury that ended his career. But either way, that was the ultimate respect for Peyton Manning, because what Bill Belichick was saying in that moment was, I had a better percentage odds of converting on 4th down than I did of stopping Peyton Manning. So I weighed the odds and said, I feel better about us on 4th down getting 2 yards with that play to Kevin Falk than I do our defense stopping Peyton Manning. It was the ultimate tip of the cap to Peyton Manning. Now, Bo Nix is not Peyton Manning. But what right there Shane Steichen is saying is, yes, we have a 55-yard field goal. We were within, quote, field goal range. But I felt better about our odds of hitting a 55-yard field goal than I did about the odds of our special teams limiting a big play return or our defense, and notably our corners, from stopping Denver in a play or two getting into field goal range. That's exactly what he's saying there. And while we can critique the way Steichen called that series, what he is doing there is he is critiquing both his special teams and his depleted secondary and saying, I think that our odds were better of converting a 55-yard field goal than our odds were of stopping Denver from getting within the same range. That's exactly what he's saying right there. And then Jones said something that reverted back to commentary about the Colts from before Daniel Jones was even a player for them. And I'll let you hear what that was next.
I'm going to be keeping you company for the next few hours.
You are not going to believe the company. This company.
You're going to bankrupt your mama's company.
At least I have the radio to keep me company. On 93.5 and 107.5, The Fan.
Second down and goal at the 1. Again, Jones under center. Takes the snap. Trying to put the ball across the goal line. There's the signal. Finally, touchdown. Shotgun snap for the quarterback. Throws to wide open Jonathan Taylor. And he's going to walk in. Touchdown. The second-year quarterback has time. Walks it downfield. And it is an overthrow. And it's intercepted by Cam Bynum. Denver leads by 2, 28-26. His first field goal try today. This one is up. Has plenty of leg. And he missed it. He missed it. It hit off the right upright. He doinked it off the right upright. A 60-yard field goal from Spencer Schrader. Sanchez to put it down. Snap, placement, kick. It's on its way. Headed for the uprights, and it is no good.
Kind of disappointed in myself because I felt the pressure coming from whatever side while looking at it on film. And I thought, man, like I just let the environment get to me a little bit. And then I saw the flag.
Personal foul, leverage, defense number 96. Oh, wow, a 15-yard penalty. Automatic first down.
Oh, man, leaping. What in the world? What kind of a call is that?
Short mentality. Next kick. I was like, okay, reset, think about it. Like, you know what to do. Just treat it like an extra point. Ultimate faith in Luke and Rigo. You know that they're going to do their job, and kept my eyes down and knocked it through for the team.
Sanchez to put it down. There's the snap. Kick is on its way. Headed for the uprights, and it is good! A walk-off field goal. Spencer Schrader wins it for the Colts. Colts win 29-28. Ball game. I-N-D-Y.
Great gutsy, gritty team win. Great performance. Some things to clean up. But to get 2 back-to-back wins at home in front of our home crowd, the atmosphere out there was electric. Crowd showed up. It was awesome. We got to go do it again.
That's how it sounded yesterday. Matt Taylor on the call. Shane Steichen you heard from there. Spencer Schrader you heard from. Colts win. They are now 2-0 for the first time since 2009. In that season, they went 14-0 to begin the year. They ended up, of course, in the Super Bowl that year, losing to the New Orleans Saints. But nonetheless,
place your tickets now, people.
That's right. Book your flight. Where is the Super Bowl this year?
San Francisco? No.
It always feels like, okay, I'm going to go. If you had to play, let's guess where the Super Bowl is. You have pretty high odds if you go with either.
I was right, yes.
Is it San Francisco?
Yes, Santa Clara. Let's go.
It
Go
feels like
Eddie.
it was just there, wasn't it?
Maybe. At Levi Stadium.
I was going to say, pretty good odds between Phoenix, New Orleans, or, Tampa. But you heard Al Michaels there because when the field goal was missed by Schrader, and then you had the call for leverage, I cannot be the only one. I would imagine anybody who's been watching the Colts long enough to remember what is, I think, undeniably one of the 2 most famous regular season wins in Colts history in Indianapolis, the Monday Night Miracle, when Simeon Rice, who later would become a Colt, was called for leaping, and that was Al Michaels' reaction. That was the first time that I'd ever seen that kind of a call on a missed field goal, where you cannot use a teammate to leap or leverage for yourself. They're different based on which part of the body you're using. But I'd never heard that call, and I don't know that I've heard it since. And yesterday, it bails out the Colts, and they are 2-0 on the season now. And Nick Cross is going to join us. One of the guys played really well for them yesterday. He's going to join us coming up bottom of the hour. Look forward to that. After the game, Daniel Jones, we talked about it. I thought Daniel Jones played really well. And again, early in the game, what Shane Steichen did, the number that was most frequently called at the beginning of that game was Josh Downs. They're going to Josh Downs early and often. And that, I really do truly believe what that does is utilizing Josh Downs in that regard. And it was Tyler Warren last week. When you can get guys if you think about the Pacers offense and why Miles Turner was so important, but that Pacers offense where they get the ball on the high post and then they just rotate players that are like circular, like coming through and like a hot potato, throwing the ball around until they get one of them that's got an open shot. But they're bringing Halliburton and, say, Shepard or Nembhard or Neesmith, just kind of circling that ball around. And you do that for a while to keep defenses guessing before then you find the guy that's open for a three. And the Colts offense, I think, is largely set in the outset of the game on kind of that same mentality of just shuffling the ball around early in short plays, in rhythm passing, and then that all of a sudden allows that softens and expands the defense, because even though Denver was really coming off the corners and getting there quick, Jones did a really good job of getting the ball out quickly and massaging through that defense. And it started with Josh Downs, and then later they got the big play to Tyler Warren. And then, of course, Jonathan Taylor as a receiving back is a huge weapon for them. And his development in that area is a huge step for them. But when they talked about just overall the necessity to be aware of Denver's defensive aggressiveness, I thought Jones and his quick process was so important yesterday. And the other curveball to it that was Alec Pierce not being deep ball threat Alec Pierce, but rather being short off of the line reception Alec Pierce. And that's a newer element of his game. And I thought it was interesting because, and it's game 2, Eddie, let's be real. It's not 17 games here, right? It's game 2. But what was interesting to me was we just kind of almost wrote off when Alec Pierce, when Daniel Jones won the job of, well, gosh, the one guy that's probably not good news for is Alec Pierce, because he is the behind the defense, deep ball threat, deep ball receiver threat. And Daniel Jones is not that guy. They aired it out a couple times yesterday, and they did take their shot with his arm. Mm-hmm. But they, instead of saying in a contract year, well, Alec Pierce probably is going to be looking to go somewhere else next year. Now all of a sudden they are designing new wrinkles to use him and use him effectively. And then that frees up Warren, and then, like I mentioned, Jonathan Taylor got going as well. But it was yesterday a fabulous win. And that was a game, yes, they were penalized 11 times. They made mistakes. But
you said they made mistakes, Jake, right?
I did.
You know what that means?
Well, it's something that they're going to have to take care of before they go into Tennessee, right?
They got to clean it up, right?
Now, that's what I mean when I say that Daniel Jones reverted back to talking about things from yesteryear, because now that they're 2-0, and if you look at the areas where they need to improve, like the situation with penalties, Daniel Jones talking about the confidence that gives him now going into a division game against Tennessee and trying to go 3-0. This was Daniel Jones yesterday after the game.
Yeah, I haven't obviously looked at any Tennessee stuff. We'll start on that tomorrow. We're going to enjoy, this tonight, and then get back to work and see where we can, what we can clean up and what we need to do going into this week. But divisional game, it'll be a big game, and we'll have to bring our best.
Clean it up, baby. Fire it up, Eddie. That means indeed. Back to it. That is last year, that was their official team slogan. Just constantly needing to clean it up, right?
Well, that or, we'll work that out. We got to work through that. Got to work all night.
We'll look at that. And we got to get back and, clean it up.
Yeah.
Yesterday, what happened was this. The Colts put themselves in position, and a year ago, they had the infamous Jonathan Taylor play of dropping the football right before he crossed the goal line. And yesterday he had a big moment in the first quarter where he was running down the sideline, and I said out loud, "Don't drop it." And Chris Whitlock down the way said the same thing at nearly the same time. It was like the leaping play with Simeon Rice coming back into your mind. It was the same thing. It came into your mind. And a year ago in the game between the Colts and the Broncos, the Colts should have won that game, and they dropped the ball, literally and figuratively. Thank you. Yesterday, the Broncos should have won that game. But you don't look a gift horse, or in this case, a gift Bronco, in the mouth. You take it and you say, we are now 2-0. But what was the story yesterday was at the end of that game, the Colts put themselves in position. You heard Shane Steichen mention it there, where they did not want to give opportunity back to Denver. And so they lined up for that field goal and missed it, and then there was the penalty. And you take what's given to you, and you get the win, and you hit the second time. You made good on the opportunity that was presented to you. And part of why they did that, I think, is because they did not trust that they were not going to put Denver back in the same spot where Denver was going to be able to hit a long field goal. But the Colts yesterday did, at the end of that game, took advantage of kind of the football gods shining down upon them. And they put themselves in that position. They finally allowed someone else to make the mistake that would get them a win. And too often in the past, we saw them hanging around games, and then it was their mistakes that turned out to be fatal. And in the end of that game, what was interesting was Shane Steichen was and will continue to be critiqued for being too passive at the end of the game. He explained it in terms of the clock management of wanting to make sure that he bled that clock all the way down. But he went away from what had worked to that point, which was Daniel Jones and putting the ball in Daniel Jones' hands, and an offense that has been remarkably efficient, an offense that set a record in the NFL for 10 consecutive possessions with points, an offense that has yet to punt through 2 games, the first time in the Super Bowl era that a team has done that, and an offense that has been entrusted with Daniel Jones to make the right play and make the right decision to continue moving that offense. Their red zone offense struggles a little bit, but they still at least were getting some points, but they left some points on the board, and eventually that is an area that they need to repair. But what is interesting to me is that the Colts are 2-0, and at the end of that game they are 2-0 because they went probably too passive, and they went with what was safer versus what would have been more enticing.
Do you think you would ever discuss that, in training camp or leading up to the season? Do you ever think you would utter the words that Shane Steichen was too complacent with how he ended the game and not putting the ball in Daniel Jones' hand instead of he put it in the hands of Jonathan Taylor? Like, did you ever think that would have been a possibility?
Excellent point. And the answer is no for this reason. I would not have thought that, but the answer is no for this reason. Because for the beginning of the season and through camp, we anticipated and expected that their offense was going to be more prolific and more high-flying because they were probably going to have Anthony Richardson. But Shane Steichen told us so much when he made that decision. Because what he told us, Eddie, was that he was going for efficiency versus sizzle. Anthony Richardson is the guy that has more big play capability. Anthony Richardson is the guy that has more excitability of big wow moment. Everybody jumps out of their seat and the roof blows off, Lucas Oil Stadium level play. The 65-yard pass to Alec Pierce falling off his back foot. That's the kind of stuff that great moments are made of. That's the kind of stuff that, like, excitement level is made of. But he instead opted for the guy in Daniel Jones, did Shane Steichen, that is more methodical, less sizzle, but allows you to stay in the mix, which is exactly what he opted to do down the stretch yesterday. So by going with the handoff of Jonathan Taylor and the clock rundown, that was less sizzle and less excitement, but it was more effective. So he went away from Daniel Jones for the same reasons that initially he went with Daniel Jones. And Shane Steichen, for the most part, in many ways, has kind of told us what we've known all along and what if we had been paying attention. He just continues to, if you go back and look at it, you say, now I understand where the tea leaves are. Nick Cross going to join us, by the way, coming up just over 10 minutes from now. A couple of other notes from today. First off, in college football, Lee Beebe Jr., who is a running back for Indiana, he was the transfer from UAB, and Indiana had they had a ton of backs that carried the ball and carried the ball well against Indiana State. Kobe Martin, one of those from here in central Indiana that played well for them, I think was the leading rusher in that game against Indiana State. Kurt Cignetti saying today that Martin will have an elevated role now because Lee Beebe Jr., the transfer running back, is out for the season now with a right knee injury. So that is one bit of bad news for Indiana football. Indiana getting a huge win over Indiana State, and now it gets bigger against Illinois. There were a lot of people, Eddie, that thought that game day was going to be there this weekend. Right?
I know, because it's the only matchup featuring two ranked teams.
And instead they're opting for, is it LSU, Florida?
No, they are opting for Miami in Florida.
Yeah, LSU just beat Florida, right? That's right. Miami and Florida, which I get it. I mean, those are two pretty big brands.
Well, it's SEC, ESPN, don't you know?
I mean, they are two. Here's the thing. I hate to say this. I hate saying this.
Oh, I know where you're going with this. Yep, I agree.
If you're a guy living in Spokane, Washington, or Glendale, Arizona, or, Lincoln, Nebraska, which game more wets your whistle when you see it on paper? Miami and Florida or Indiana and Illinois? Indiana and Illinois are both very, very good, and they might be the two better teams of those four that we mentioned, but branding goes a long way. But Indiana was dominant in their game against Indiana State. What did we say? It was a 40. Was it 43.5 was the spread?
46.5.
And I was like, no, I'm telling you, Indiana State will cover that. They'll get 10. 73-0. An absolute. I mean, they covered the spread by halftime, right?
I don't know. Actually, I have to go back and look.
What, at 45-0 at the half? I think that's right. And then they just the problem for Indiana State was Indiana
State covered. Yes, it was 45-0 at halftime.
Oh, so I'm sorry. So the spread was 46.5. I was thinking it was 43.5.
46.5.
So it was in danger by halftime. But either way, what did we learn about Indiana in that game? I don't know what we learned, to be honest with you, and that's the challenge. Now, one thing that we see is that Indiana clearly has offensive weapons galore and offensive efficiency, and this is what they did a year ago. Even when Indiana was playing an inferior opponent, they would get a lead, and then it was just avalanche time, just push, and the lead grows, and before you know it, you're like, man, this game's not even in doubt for the last quarter and a half. And then when they went up against, legitimate strong opponents, they were able to hang around. I mean, obviously their only loss is Ohio State and Notre Dame, right? But it's a big one against Illinois for sure, and it's going to be under the lights, which is cool, at Memorial Stadium. Purdue and USC, obviously long delay, 3 hours delay. I thought that was encouraging. I know that sounds crazy because they were never really in the game. They had some costly turnovers in the red zone. But having said that, they, nationally televised game in Ross-Ade. I love Ross-Ade at night under the lights. I just love it. But they They are so markedly improved from a year ago, though. A year ago, that's a game, and I know that USC is not the vintage USC, but that's a game that a year ago that gets away from Purdue early, and then it's just they're out of control. It gets out of control. And I know Ryan Walters was a defensive-minded coach, but I just think that you can see now the buttoned-down nature of Purdue in terms of totality of staff that I don't think they had a year ago. And then Notre Dame losing to Texas A&M, it was a great game. And I know it was not the ending that the Irish wanted, and certainly being 0-2, they needed to get one of those two first games. Both are pretty excusable losses, which is why Notre Dame is still ranked.
But they got a lot of work to do and a lot of help they're going to need.
They do. And the problem is, their schedule. How many opportunities does Notre Dame now have to get a signature win, if you will?
Well, they got, Purdue this week? They have the Razorbacks.
Their schedule is decent.
They have the Razorbacks who, are solid, and that's a road game. USC, who is now ranked after the win over Purdue. Pitt looks competent. Yeesh, and that's it.
Is Boise State having a down year?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, Boise State's 1-1, right? So
yeah, uh-huh.
And you got to give Notre Dame credit, because at the time that Boise State would have been scheduled, it was probably when Boise State was, and you expect Boise State on more years than not is going to be elite level.
This
and then
would be
Fever
the year,
yesterday. What's that?
This would be the year for Notre Dame that they would probably want those cupcake games on the front end, just because starting quarterback, hadn't made a collegiate start yet. Instead, you've got two really tough opponents, and you lose by a possession.
The Fever yesterday dropping 1-2 Atlanta. We will get into with Eddie, who does the pre- and post-game radio for that, in just a little bit, exactly what needs to be, to borrow the term, cleaned up for the Fever before game number 2, which will be tomorrow night at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. But when we return, he was the leading tackler yesterday in what has to be a happy locker room for the Colts. Nick Cross, the athletic former Terrapin, joins us next. By the way, Nick Cross going to join us here in just a minute. Pointed it out earlier, but it bears repeating a couple of things. Number one, the fact that the Colts went through that game without a single turnover, they just are playing with it. Just, again, you can call it conservative. They're just playing really smart. I mean, they are playing very, very smart, number one. And then number two, I thought a really interesting point was made to me on the X-Post Twitter from Craig. I think, is it Craig? No, I'm sorry. Jared, sorry. Jared points this out. What stands out to me about Daniel Jones is how much better our wide receiver hands seem to be catching his passes. He's got a touch that simply was missing last year. Not every pass needs to be a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. Last season, it felt like our receivers' hands were bricks. There's probably some truth to that. That was always a knock on Brett Favre, was it not? Was, hey, listen, you don't need to throw the ball 900 miles an hour from, 3 yards away or 6 yards away or whatever it may be. But they are taking care of the football, and, they were heavily penalized, obviously. And that is one of the areas, to use the term, that they need to clean up. But either way, it is the first time since 2009 that the Colts are 2-0. Their offense has been efficient, and they got, a second lease on that penalty at the field goal. The guy yesterday that, as a matter of fact, when I heard some of Rick Venturi, and he was saying, man, this has been a really good series, and he said that on a couple of occasions late in the game when the Colts needed stops. And he was talking about Nick Cross, who joins us on the program now, the secondary and safety player for the Colts that, when he was brought into the league, was brought in because he was hyper-athletic and now has molded himself into a very solid player for Indianapolis. Nick, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Appreciate you for
thanks.
having me.
I want to begin with exactly what I was just mentioning, and that is, and I know we're going back to when you were coming out of Maryland, but, when you came into the league, the kind of the selling point of Nick Cross was that you had range and that you had an athleticism about you. But then I think for any player coming in, there has to be an instinct that comes as well. What is your comfort level in the NFL now versus when you first came in, and just your overall kind of understanding of that center field position?
I mean, I feel like with anything that, involves reps and repetition, any new environment just requires reps and repetition to adapt and to get better and to be able to go out there and play at a high level from it. I think definitely just off of the sheer, time I've spent, the little bit of game experience I have now, and, obviously, playing close to the ball, I feel like the comfortability continues to grow every rep I take, every game I play, and just trying to continue to be better.
How are things different this year under this defense with Lou Anarumo? I don't necessarily mean to sit here and compare and contrast to a year ago, but what is it about Lou Anarumo's defense that is of like to you, I guess? And what was, if anything, the biggest learning curve of it?
I would say, just a whole lot of different, things we do on defense. Definitely, I was thinking a little more aggressive, but at the end of the day, just, great teaching on fundamentals, great teaching on technique, overall accountability, and just, making sure we play sound defensive football. So, I enjoy being coached by Lou and Chris and Coach Ron.
One of the
coaches,
things,
great teachers.
Nick, one of the things about this defense, Nick Cross of the Colts is our guest. Colts now 2-0 after their win yesterday against Denver. From the outside, when it comes to Lou Anarumo and his defensive scheme, one of the things that is often said is that there's a lot of, I guess, I'll use the term stunt for lack of, but a lot of masking, right? Like trying to confuse an offense by presenting one look and then playing something completely different and attacking from a different area. Is that, number one, a fair assessment of what you guys are doing? And number two, is it challenging, if that's the case, to line up one way and then run something completely different in a quote-unquote junk style?
Yeah, I would say, at the end of the day, I feel like, present a lot of different looks and everything, but, at the end of the day, it's about just being in your playbook knowing where you fit, knowing your role in the defense, and being able, Lou always says, never let your disguise get you out of your job. So it's just knowing where you're supposed to be at and playing at a high level.
The defensive backfield, I've always said, Nick, I'm gonna give you a line I've said on the radio, okay? I've always said that defensive backs and offensive linemen are the two areas on a football team that are like cell phone chargers and sunglasses. You can never have too many just because there's attrition that takes place. Injury takes place, rhythm, etc. And for that reason, we've already seen it with the corners, okay? For you and just the room in general, how much is familiarity with your teammates important in terms of solidarity of what it is that you want to do as a unit?
I think it's important. You play with the same guys, you gain a familiarity, be able to communicate better, know each other's playing styles so you can play off of each other. And I think it's just one of those things where, the more you learn, the more you play with somebody, the more familiar you get, and the smoother you play with them.
And having said that, obviously you have right before you in the corners a lot of guys that you are not overly familiar playing with, right, because of the situation that I just talked about with attrition. How many games do you need to play as a unit before you really do have a firm, instinctive understanding of your teammate?
I don't know if there's a set number or anything like that. I think that, just like I said, reps and repetition and practice, games, walk-ins, film room. The more you play with somebody, the more you, communicate with them, the more that y'all, watch each other and watch how each other operate, the better things will be.
Now, I'd like to know, Nick, by the way, are you in the locker room now?
No, I'm about to walk up.
Oh, okay. I was hoping like somebody was running past, yelling at you there. We're going to throw them on. How much fun was it yesterday? I mean, just the overall energy of that building, Schrader having to hit a kick that big, getting carried off, just all of it. How much fun did you have yesterday?
It was definitely a lot of fun. I mean, I feel like you have a lot of fun anytime you're able to go play the game on Sundays. Opportunities don't get taken for granted, but it was great to, go down to the wire and have an exciting game like that. Denver's a really good team and really good players. They coach really well. So just to be able to go all the way down to the wire and come out with a victory, it's really special.
Who are the leaders on your team? Like, who are the guys that you look towards that I always say, guys that when they walk in the locker room, everybody kind of stops to see just what the overall mood is and whatever else. Give me 2 or 3 guys.
I'll probably say, Quentin Nelson, Z, Buck, guys who've done it at a high level for a long time. Even, someone like, Mooney and Xavier, they've just gotten here. Cam, guys have just gotten here, but, they've been playing at a high time where they've been at before. So it's good to see those guys and watch how they operate on a day-to-day basis.
I think I've asked you this before, Nick. Nick Cross, our guest. Oftentimes when I have a player on, I will ask them the most famous person that came out of their high school. I have no idea how or why I began asking this question. But I think this is a fair statement, and I want your thought on this. I don't know that any player in the NFL, if everybody was talking about like just overall athletic departments of their high school and alma mater and the list of greatness that's come out of it, is there anybody that could trump DeMatha Catholic High School in Maryland?
Nah, I don't think anybody comes close to it, from football to basketball, any sport, you name it. We got guys who going on to do it at a high level, just not just at the college level, but at the pro level. So, I think we go toe-to-toe and are a lot greater in that category than majority of schools.
It's unbelievable. Now, so I'd like to know this. For you, I mean, we've had Derek Wittenberg on this show before, the NC State hero. He's out of there. Obviously, Jarrod Mustafa was a great basketball player out of there. Jerian Grant's out of there. I mean, just on and on and on, especially when you just look at the pipeline to Maryland in general, and the same as a long list of football guys. Who was the hero for you? Who was the one that set the path for you that you looked at and you said, you know what, this is what I want to do, is play at that level?
I would say you talking from DeMatha or you talking in general?
At DeMatha, when you were a kid growing up, yeah. I mean, the guy that maybe took you under the wing, or just that you looked at and you really looked up to because you knew that you were going to go on the same path.
I would say, I played with Chase Young. Chase was a 4 or 5-star All-American coming out of high school. My first year on varsity, he was a senior. So just seeing how he operated, how he came to work every single day, and being able to watch him work and watch him do his thing and just watch his climb, was really special to me because, I played with him. I shared the locker room with him. I shared the field with him. Another guy who I looked up to was, Rodney McLeod. I always joke with Rod whenever I see him, like, my first ever football camp, was your camp. I was 13 years old. I went to your camp. And, to be able to play with him my rookie year, of course, he always says it makes him feel old. But, it's always fun to joke around about that. But those are the guys who, of course, there are a whole bunch of guys who came through DeMatha, played hard and did what they're supposed to, and now are playing at a high level and continue to set the path. So, definitely Chase, definitely Rob McLeod, guys like that.
Now, did you play basketball at all?
Growing up in middle school, not in high school.
Because Markelle Fultz, who was the number 1 player taken in the draft, right? I think I don't know if you crossed over with him. Hunter Dickinson also was there. Was either of those guys there when you were there?
Yeah, Markelle. I was a freshman. Markelle was there. I remember, very vividly. I remember he saw me at the snack station one time and, gave me a couple of dollars to go get like a ramen noodle or something like that. So he was really down to earth as a person, and everybody knew at that point, after his year at Washington, he was going to go be a lottery pick, number 1 overall. So, just showed the type of guys that came through DeMatha. Hunter is a year younger, Hunter a lot, hung out with Hunter, great guy, great guy in the community, great basketball player, and, even better person.
If you could have waited one more year till you were a sophomore, Markelle could have bought you the entire ramen factory, as a matter of fact, right?
Absolutely. Probably could have bought me a lot more, too.
Hey, Nick, lastly, Nick Cross, our guest. Really, really good game yesterday for the Colts, who are now 2-0. If you could, as you guys now get set for a divisional game against Tennessee, for our listeners and for Colts fans, can you just kind of give me an explanation of the level of optimism and just the overall mood, let's say now through 2 games, as opposed to the uncertainty perhaps at the beginning of the season?
I think, at this point we're just proving to ourselves what we already knew. I always go and, I've always heard, you're not out here to prove everybody else wrong. You're just here to prove yourself right, prove to yourself, prove to your teammates that you are the team, you are the players that you say you want to be, and that you are who you say you are. So I think we just, focus on the process of continuing to get better, every single day, clean up the things that we missed in the game, and, just take it one day at a time, not to look too far down the road. 17 round boxing match, we're playing this season, and at the end of the day, we're through 2 rounds. You got round 3 coming up, and it's just one of those things. You just got to take it one round at a time until you look up and you're where you want to be.
Hey, other side of the ball, I realize, but obviously you would be, watching them from, especially a really good perspective back there from the safety spot. Your overall impressions, Nick, of Daniel Jones and as well Tyler Warren?
Oh, yeah, Daniel's, real good guy, great guy in the locker room, very efficient, very, very methodical the way he goes about his business. And, I enjoy watching him play, D-Dub, someone I go against in practice a lot. And, someone electric with the ball in his hand, has a great feel out there already. I'm excited to continue to watch them that duo go and do their thing.
Nick Cross, the safety for the Colts. Colts, of course, getting set now for Tennessee, so you kind of turn the page to get ready for that one after the win yesterday against the Denver Broncos. Nick, a pleasure as always, man. We wish you the best of luck. Look forward to talking to you again, and certainly best of luck in trying to start out 3-0.
Sounds good. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, appreciate it. Nick Cross joining us on the program, the former Terp from Maryland. All right, we come back. Tomorrow night it is the Fever and the Atlanta Dream in Game 2 of the WNBA playoffs, and if they do not win it, it would be the final game of the season. Eddie Garrison is the pre- and post-game host for those broadcasts, the radio broadcast for the Fever. What went wrong yesterday and what needs to improve before tomorrow? That, and we will hand it off to John. We'll do it all next. the pre- and post-game host for the Indiana Fever's radio broadcast, and they, tomorrow night, face a win-or-go-home situation with the Atlanta Dream. Eddie, I guess the question is yesterday, what did go wrong down in Atlanta other than a court that was impossible to see what was going on television?
The Fever really couldn't knock down any three-pointers. They were 2-15, and a lot of credit has to go towards the Dream. They play a style of defense that makes things hard on anybody. They like to take away your airspace, so they're pretty much up in your grill the entire game and like to play physical with you for the entirety of the game. And Indiana just struggled to make shots. It looked like they lost their confidence in the second quarter when they started throwing up some bricks and just never were able to really, come back. They tied it twice, and then Atlanta goes on 2 big runs, and then the emotions got the best of the Fever in the fourth quarter. Like, they were still in it. They still had a chance, and then I understand the officiating is not great in the WNBA, but Stephanie White got a technical foul, Odyssey Sims got a technical foul, and Atlanta goes on a 9-0 run to start the fourth quarter, and the Fever never really regrouped. So game number 2 tomorrow, 7:30, pregame coverage right here at 7:15.
JMV has arrived.
I forgot it was on.
What's that?
I forgot it was on.
The crossover now, it's about not going to be long before your furnace has to be on, right?
Nah, well, the AC's on right now.
You're right.
Thanks to Johnny Chris Love at Love Heating and Air. That's what happens, man. You go up and down. That works on the efficiency. That's why you got to make sure your system's efficient. Love-HVAC.com with a crossover.
John, your thoughts on yesterday? I know you're getting ready for the big show today to be able to expand on exactly that.
It was exciting, Jake. It was. I thought it was a little bit of payback, right? Karma-wise, because the Colts did so much to blank up everything in December a year ago, and it was almost like things are evening out. I will say this. The Colts are due. When you're good, start to get good, you're doing things right, things are going your way, the good fortune starts to roll in. That's how you're going to know this thing could be in it for the long haul for the season. If you start to get good fortune like what they had yesterday, because Denver really did blank the entire thing up.
Totally. No question. I mean, can you imagine
And then Shane tried too, but
can you
was
imagine
unsuccessful.
the calls or reaction we would be getting if they had...
People would be wanting to fire Shane Steichen.
Correct. If they had
There's no question. People will view that as a, quote, fireable offense. If they were to lose it and you're playing for a 60-yard field goal.
Yeah, he absolutely. I mean, listen, they got don't look a gift horse in the mouth, right? They got the extra chance and they hit it, but still, you know what I mean?
Why would you around here, too? And you're still looking for that juice. You and I kind of remarked to one another that there's still empty seats there. Late afternoon game, the fun was to be had before the game, but they're still trying to build back that goodwill of telling everybody what they're going to do and then never, leading down that path to earning that. And now they're trying to earn that back.
By the way, I thought Indiana State would cover.
Good Lord. I love Kurt Mallory. What a mess. I think they may have covered as if us three would have played, because I think we're the only three that didn't play. I think they had you had the dishwasher in there and everybody. I mean, what the hell?
Baby Jr. out for the year now with a knee injury, by the way, for Indiana. That was announced earlier today by Kurt Cignetti.
Eastern Illinois and McKendree if Indiana State beats them.
I know.
How bad's Eastern Illinois? Good God.
And it's Western Illinois is the one that's supposedly like the worst program in the country, right?
Yeah, Eastern Illinois got some former guys there. NFL, Sean Payton was there.
Sean Payton, Jimmy Garoppolo, Tony Romo.
Shanahan.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely brutal. All right, so give me the lineup again. What's on the big show today?
I think we're just doing Stephen Holder. I'm going to do a lot of reaction. I have a lot of thoughts to it today. And what was it? Interesting. The calls were great. The one call I haven't heard yet is the Denver radio call. I do want to hear that. Hopefully we have that a little bit later on.
When the leverage penalty was announced.
Leverage.
What's the first play you thought of?
Don't you have to come up with something other than leverage?
Well, the leaping, right? Do you remember the leaping play with Simeon Rice? That was the first thing I thought of. That's the only other time I've ever seen that.
Leverage sounds too... Is that vague? It's really vague, right? Leverage. Okay, great. Leverage.
Leaping is if you're jumping, and leverage is if you're pushing yourself off, I think, right? Okay. Well, either way.
Leverage is when you use somebody else to your benefit. So, like, you can't hold down an offensive lineman
like they did.
Well,
that's what leaping is like if you leap off of a player.
Well, leaping is when you try to jump over and you make contact with the long snapper. You can't do that either.
No, the leaping for Simeon Rice was he was leaping off the back of a teammate, which you would think is leverage, but I guess it's because he was pushing off with his legs instead of his hands.
So you do that, A, because it's the final play, what you think, and B, you do that because you think it's going to come off his foot as a line drive, right? Because you're going to be kicking that thing so low. But it'd have been better off from 60 to go ahead and, what the hell? You're lucky you held them, and then the coaching didn't go really at trying to get the certain amount of yardage that's necessary. So don't you just do it like you normally would,
like
not
I
jack
said,
with it?
But to me, that shows that Shane Steichen felt more comfortable in the possibility of hitting a 60-yard field goal than he did his special teams limiting Denver that opportunity to get one of their own.
I just thought my worry was making sure you scored here, and he wasn't doing that. He wasn't doing that. He got a do-over. There's no doubt about that. How about Denver screwing it up, though? You had that interception that Bynum had, the overthrow. I think Grover Stewart maybe tipped the ball, and then you had the Lutz doink on the right upright from 40 plus.
I still say if you hit the upright, it should be 5 points instead of 3. That's harder to do.
It is pretty skilled. How about all the kicks around the NFL missed yesterday?
I know.
You noticed that?
Well, we get that every year. We get that where we're like, wait a minute, guys are missing extra points all of a sudden. And
we got to do something new now.
All right, John's up next.
Yes.
We will be back with you at noon tomorrow. I thank you for listening. Thank you to Nick Cross for joining us, Joel Erickson as well, and J&V up next. Thanks for listening to Query & Company.